I'm Tony Sklar with bnetTV. We are coming to you live from the show floor of 4G World here in Chicago. I am having the pleasure of speaking with two of Yankee Group's finest, and of course my natural co-host, Nelson Pereira, and I have Mr. Brian Partridge and Ms. Gigi Wang from the Yankee Group here with me, and we are going to be talking about 4G, obviously, because we're here on the show floor. And I'm going to go right to you, Gigi, if you want to give us a brief overview of where you fit within the Yankee Group structure and what you've seen so far here at the 4G World Conference.
Great, thanks, Tony. I'm Gigi Wang. I'm the Chief Research Officer with the Yankee Group, and it's been really exciting, great kickoff to the show. We have a lot of companies here who are planning announcements, and this year is really fantastic because we've had just a lot of interesting announcements, and we've obviously had 4G rollouts here in the U.S. So for once, the U.S. is leading in telecommunications.
Few and far between that it actually happens when the U.S. is on top of their game, but LTE is arrived. We're rolling it out. It's pretty exciting, and gosh knows, the show floor actually opens tomorrow. Although we're coming live from the floor, you can hear a lot of construction going on in the background. Everybody is here. All the major companies are here. Brian, introduce yourself. Give us a brief overview of where you sit.
Sure. So I'm Brian Partridge. I'm Vice President of Network Research at Yankee Group. I've been with the company for over 6 years. I'm also very excited to be here this week at 4G World. My role at the show is I'm going to be actually running a couple panels talking about policy, network technology, and business models. I think that's going to be a very hot topic at this year's show. It's really, from my perspective, it's really about a discussion about how to make the business model for 4G work, and how do you instrument the network to enable you to really make money in data, right? And policy management has a lot to do with that. Also very interested to talk about real-time communication services. So voice over LTE is going to be another important topic, I think, to have discussions about at the show, and I'm looking forward to my meetings in that area as well.
Nelson, chime in here at any moment, though, because I could whip right into policy and procedures and controls and government issues, but sometimes that can get a little dry.
Well, actually, one of the things I always see in this market, I mean, we've been coming here for the last 4 or 5 years, that the industry, actually, both the spectrum and the requirement to support LTE infrastructure has changed so much that we actually come in the waters at this point of what the standards are going to be to support this infrastructure. And having said that, a lot of things have to do with pretty much revamping the infrastructure you already have in place to support high bandwidth capability for the new cell phones that are coming out in the market, and what applications will take advantage of such services.
Right. Yeah, the big difference with LTE, though, is you are talking about a completely IP infrastructure, okay? So that's a big change from 3G as it's related to the delivery of voice services. So a big question on everybody's mind, and I'm very interested to have conversations this week, is just how fast are we going to move to a voice over IP architecture over LTE? The implications of not moving quickly to that is potentially opening the doors to the Skypes and over-the-top IP providers of the world actually coming in and taking the value away from the operators.
So are you saying that, and Gigi, chime in here at any time, are you saying that the voice ARPU for the carriers is that important and it trumps the data arena? Because if you're looking at the Skypes of the world or any IP voice infrastructure that's going to be on the handset, regardless if it's LTE or not, it's going to consume the data.
Right. So the data is where the growth is, okay? If you look at a pie chart of where revenue's made in the mobile business, it's 75-25. Now, is that changing over time? Yes. 75 voice, 25 data. That's going to move towards 50-50, 40-60 over the next 5 to 7 years. Still, we're talking about hundreds of billions of dollars. Very, very important source of revenue for the operators. And how you get and deliver value on the voice side is still very, very, very important.
Gigi, you better chime in here quite quickly before I start in on something.
No, I totally agree with Brian. So voice has always been the cash cow. data has been the area of competition, and this is where all the attention has been focused, but being able to run voice over LTE, over that IP network, is absolutely key to the survival of the traditional operators as well as the future growth. Absolutely vital, and we expect to see a lot of announcements here at the show.
Okay, so what is the Yankee Group's number that they're projecting for how many connected devices are going to be in the network over the, let's look 5 years out. And the reason why I'm asking that question is because of all those machine-to-machine devices, the numbers that I keep hearing over and over again are somewhere amongst 15 billion. So that amount of connected devices is going to use much more data. That elasticity is going to start pushing the limits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, again, I talked about policy management as being important. So essentially network intelligence, so making good decisions on the network. Now, in the machine-to-machine world, you're potentially talking about a lot of very small transactions, not necessarily data intensive, so not necessarily capacity killers, but more signaling network.
But a huge
impact.
volume of them.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Yeah. So even if it was like, I don't know, 15K per transaction, you put 15 billion devices into that arena.
Right.
Okay.
But don't forget, in the M2M world, a lot of those devices are not, in fact, going to be attaching to 4G networks.
Okay.
They're going to be talking to on 2G networks because of the sort of traffic patterns that M2M networks that usually see.
So that's utilizing legacy infrastructure that is current in the marketplace right now, which is great.
Right, absolutely.
Defusing that CapEx spending for the carriers, they can concentrate more on the more urban populations.
Exactly.
Right, and the newer applications, and the newer usages of the devices.
So, Gigi, what have you seen so far today? I know the conference has just started, but let's talk about some customer experience stuff that you guys just came out of.
So the customer experience, it's all about customer experience, and what we see is that going forward, the being transparent, being consistent, and being dynamic are the hallmarks of customer experience. And the one thing that I really do see service providers focusing on are what are the external customer metrics for customer experience, for measuring the overall experience.
Okay.
And that's a dramatic change. We've always heard service providers talking about internal metrics all the time, but it doesn't mean anything. It's all about the customer. If we've learned anything over the past year, since last year's 4G world, is that the customer's experience really is a seamless combination of the new devices that are out there, the high-speed networks, the 4G networks having been deployed over the past year, and all the apps going into the cloud, the amplification, if you will, of the whole world.
Amplification, very nicely said. Is the customer happy?
It's all about making the customer happy because the customer is making the decisions on what technologies and what providers to go with, both in their personal space as well as in the workplace.
Okay.
So the power, if you will, is shifting to the customer. So it is all about making that individual customer happy.
Yeah, and the only thing I would add to that is, we think that we're making somewhat of a bold statement when we say the way in which you deliver on customer experience is going to be one of the last places you can actually differentiate as a mobile network operator. And then so we make that statement in our opening keynote address, and then right after we have C-Spire come up and talk about how they did that very thing. They operationalized their entire company persona and DNA based on making the customer the center of their world, including all of the primary research they did into consumer behavior and consumer wants and needs around how they position. And then they made a bold step to go fast to LTE, change the name of their company, invest a lot of money in things like application store recommendation engines to try to make that experience around their 4G network as personalized as they possibly can make it for their customers. And so they're a smaller operator who really seems to get it. So I was very interested to hear from them this morning.
Absolutely, and I think that's where it's going as well.
Do you see somewhere in the market, as operators are looking at their investment as it is today, in terms of the cell towers that they have, when they should either increase their capacity in the cell towers, since the statistical numbers actually play a role in terms of where they should do their large investment to support either 3G and 4G networks?
Well, absolutely. There's a lot of architectural planning that needs to happen, because not all cell towers and sites are created equal, right? You're going to have some that have a tremendous amount of heat on them, where backhauls and things like this are a major challenge, and just keeping capacity at an acceptable level. You'll have others that are cooler and less busy. So making decisions around where to invest in new infrastructure, either new RAN, backhaul capabilities, is much about an architectural planning exercise as it is anything, which really has to do with where people are jumping on the network and getting their connectivity.
But that's also defining the fact that the cell tower's structure has also changed in terms of TDM services. They're looking to actually now to meet the demand of all this high data bandwidth. Right. They're looking to revamp. I mean, you can at least a T1 or a TDM circuit every time you have a large capacity increase. They're looking to actually bring fiber to towers now,
right,
and to do high distribution data to meet all their 4G customers that are actually starting to really come up.
Right.
And that's an incredibly amount of cost. And since we are here at the 4G world, in terms of backhaul and infrastructure, that all applies everything from the edge to the core, how this bandwidth hog is actually being in demand.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, we've got a full summit that's focused just on backhaul issues and challenges and technologies. I wish I could actually be over there today, but unfortunately, I've got responsibilities at the other.
Fortunately, not unfortunately.
But yeah, extremely important topic. How to get it done? How to get it done cost effectively, and in a way that's actually going to make economic sense, because you're obviously not going to be able to sustain the level of investment required to deliver on these experiences if there isn't profit in this business. So again, it comes down to, yes, the data is growing, but are we still going to be service providers and deliver services, video services, voice services, or are we going the way of the utility pipe?
Exactly, and I think the challenge today is that everything is happening so quickly and is moving so quickly, so the planning cycle is really shortened, and that's why there's an intense focus on how to monetize all the investments.
Absolutely.
So where are some of those key economic trends that the Yankee Group is seeing in that shortening of that timeline?
Well, economic trends.
Economic trends in terms of capex and other types of planning. You got a lot of software-driven things out in the marketplace right now, self-optimizing networks that are lowering those budgets. But if a carrier, if an operator doesn't have to plan 5 years, 10 years out anymore, and because things are shifting really quickly, what does that mean for budgets and general economics?
But they do have to plan out that far. I think the ROI cycle is a little shorter. If we take a look at Sprint as an example and their gamble on the iPhones,
sure.
that
is that a gamble or hey, we were Johnny come lately?
Well, I think it's a gamble. It's a calculated gamble, and I think the planning horizon clearly is more than just a couple of years out, because the payback is going to come later. However, as they make the technological investments, they have to look at an ROI over the next 12 months, 24 months, 36 months.
Does Sprint gain in North America with the, let's say, the melding of T-Mobile and AT&T? Although I know it's not passed yet, I think that in this reporter's opinion, I think inevitably it's going to happen. But I know that that's still open for discussion. Yeah. But does Sprint win?
Well, I think Sprint and a number of other suppliers do want, multiple competitors. Does Sprint win? If I actually disagree. I'm not sure that the merger will happen very quickly.
Okay.
I think there are a lot of roadblocks that have come up.
Sure.
I think it's going to be challenging for Sprint, because the duopoly that exists today at a local level is going to be taken to a national level with two very dominant players, and so I think everyone's. Everyone is looking out for that. What's interesting is the reverse is true. Verizon and AT&T want Sprint to survive because they want competition.
They need competition.
Yeah.
Is the MVNO model in North America dead?
Well, it seems to be doing okay for Sprint.
Okay.
Right? Sprint's got several successful MVNOs, so I think that it's a model that's proven actually its viability over the years. I know that was the MVNO model is going away, was a sort of a popular mantra a few years ago, but I think we found in this country that MVNOs can in fact be successful.
I'm looking for somebody else to chime in on that one, but okay, all right.
No. I mean, like it seems to be like in one of the announcements, Sprint just announced is there now that they acquire even the iPhone now in their industry. How their revenue just started to increase because of it, but at the same time, they are looking to shift to a new 4G infrastructure. And actually, they have made that public,
Right.
And embracing pretty much GSM market as well as their CDMA market. They have pretty much worked with Verizon. Yeah, you guys please elaborate on what do you see Sprint moving into now in terms of what standard of 4G are they looking to acquire?
Well, as far as I've seen, they've made a commitment to build their own LTE infrastructure.
Correct.
Okay, so that was a big that was a big shift from what they had been saying in the marketplace, either with their support for Clearwire, or even talking about doing a deal, much larger deal with Light Squared. So it looks like they're going to go it alone. They've made an economic decision that they're going to be better off sort of having some control over that. And it'll be interesting to see how it actually gets operationalized and how much they'll actually use partners, the network builders that are helping them build it. Will they outsource a lot of that, or actually keep the network operations in house? So we're going to be interested to see some of that.
Yeah, because they actually did make a commitment and they made it totally public that this is their platform that they're pursuing in terms of the 4G deployment.
Yeah.
And that's actually good news, because not only that, but like we said at the beginning of this conversation, the waters were pretty much shaky at the beginning, the last 4 years in terms of the spectrum, and in terms of what 4G infrastructure will be the dominant force in terms of the new wireless communication.
Right. Yeah. No. I mean, it's clearly the decision's gone from, hey, do I go WiMAX or LTE, to how do I get from WiMAX to LTE gracefully, right?
So is WiMAX dead? Now say what you were going to say first.
No,
Yes,
so I think that
please.
all of this means that it's going to be good news for the consumer. Because
Okay.
everyone is, all the major players are going toward LTE, and everyone is understanding that and assuming that the customers with their new devices, with the new apps, are going in that direction of needing a very high amount of bandwidth. So I think it's all good for the customer.
The customer is in the driver's seat, clearly. I think that everybody would agree on that. The infrastructure that comes behind that experience needs to be solid, but there's going to be small shifts within the marketplace. So we would all agree there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this conference is important for the carriers and the infrastructure people to get together so that they can...
So they can compare notes, they can compare best practices, they can make relationships with each other.
Exactly.
Because as we know, the ecosystem, right, your ecosystem of partners has become more and more important, is more important than ever as we get into the 4G IP architectures, right? Who are my partners? How am I going to create the most amount of value in customer and the great customer experiences that they demand? And so I think a lot of that's happening at the show, and looking forward to helping catalyze that wherever we can.
Exactly. I think it's going to be really important for all the participants to talk to each other regardless of what they offer, because the partnerships going into the future are not going to look like the partnerships in the past.
I think those are really good words.
Very
Final words from both of you on what some things you're looking forward to seeing come out of this conference.
I'm looking forward to a lot of things, announcements on NFC, the whole area of...
Oh, don't even get me started on NFC. That's the whole program on its own. I am with Gigi on the NFC. Okay.
Just some really fascinating announcements in the area of new technologies. A lot of focus on the rollouts this year, new devices.
I'm looking forward to talking to the operators that have had some experience rolling out 4G technologies, in particular the intelligence systems that sit on top of the 4G infrastructure. I'm also very curious to listen to the health providers in the vertical segment, and how they're looking at 4G as an opportunity to really revolutionize some of the way that healthcare is delivered in this country and others. And then again, I have a bias towards, I was hired as an IMS analyst 6 years ago. I'm very curious to hear from the IMS vendors around how practical and how efficient they're able to deliver voice services over LTE.
I think that there are at least 5 different topics of conversations that we can continue to talk about, but I gotta cut it short there. It's always great to talk to everybody from the Yankee Group, especially the two of you. I appreciate you coming on the show. Gigi, Wang, and Brian Partridge from the Yankee Group. We are here with my co-host, Nelson Pereira. I am Tony Sklar from the floor of the 4G World Conference here in Chicago with bnetTV.